We're going to continue our series of interviews with progressive candidates, particularly progressive candidates who believe in the political and the economic revolution that is going on around us. Despite evidence to the contrary, despite Nevada, there is still a political and economic revolution happening. And so tonight we will be joined by Alex Law. He's a congressional candidate out of New Jersey, and he's going to tell us about his platform, as well as why he identifies as a progressive and what he's bringing to the table in terms of progressivism. So he's going to join us at the top of the show. After that, we're going to talk about all the things that are happening in the news, a lot of things happening in the news. Matter of fact, let's jump right into this interview. I've asked Alex Law to join me this afternoon for the interview. He has been patient, and I want to get him in here. He is a progressive candidate out of New Jersey. Alex, thanks so much for joining me. Are you there?
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Definitely my pleasure. We would like to know more about you. I have been on your website. I've had a chance to read what you stand for, and I could regurgitate it to my listeners, but I think it's more effective if you would just tell us very briefly about who you are, the district that you're running in, and what you represent.
Sure. So I grew up here in South Jersey. I went to public high school here. I played football. I played basketball. I ended up going up to NYU Stern, getting 2 degrees, one in finance, one in information systems. And then after that, went and did some strategy consulting for IBM. And how this campaign started is some friends and I were sitting around. We were watching TV. We were seeing things we didn't like nationally, what was going on in Washington. We saw a tremendous amount of corruption and graft locally. And what we said was, you know, rather than sit on our butts and complain about it, why don't we get out there and do something about it?
Okay.
So we made some flyers, not as nice as the ones we have now, and we just went out and started knocking on doors, me and 2 or 3 people. And from that, we now have over 120 volunteers. We've knocked on 40,000 doors.
Wow.
We've made about 50,000 phone calls, and we've created the most robust insurgent campaign in the last 2 decades in New Jersey. Something we're very proud of.
Alex, I have to jump in there for a second. Let's talk about 120 volunteers, 40,000 doors knocked on, and 50,000 phone calls. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, you're hearing me correctly. And that's something that grows every single day. We're eventually going to get up to around 100,000 doors knocked, over 100,000 phone calls made, and in the hundreds of volunteers. We have new people joining every week.
Let me ask you, how much of that is, as much as you can disclose, how much of that is pure volunteerism versus paid workers? How much does it cost for you to get that many volunteers knocking on that many doors? How are you pulling that off?
Well, we don't have a single paid person on the entire team. The entire team, from our staffers to myself to all of our volunteers, everyone is doing this because they believe in the campaign. Now, we are a campaign that takes 0%. We take no money from corporations, no money from super PACs. All of the money that we've raised so far has been through generous folks contributing on our website. We have over 1,000 donors, and our average donation is less than $30, right along with Bernie Sanders.
Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive that you have that many. I'm looking for my applause track. That's actually definitely worth an applause. And before we go into the details about your campaign, I'm fascinated with the amount of people that you've been able to get to volunteer for you, because I think part of the problem with campaign finance reform is that there's these massive staffs that need to be paid, right? It's not just corporations who want to pour money in. A lot of times it's staffers who want to get paid, who need to get paid. And you're saying that the bulk of what you've done has been completely based on volunteers, those 50,000 phone calls and those 40,000. That is really, really something. I mean, tell me a little bit more about that, because I'm gonna be honest with you, that's hard to believe, but I don't have any reason not to believe you.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, it comes down to a couple of things. So it comes down to the first thing, without getting into the weeds of it just yet, it comes down to the fact that there is a tremendous amount of corruption around here. The incumbent is someone who is part of a political family that is widely disliked. And the fact that we're putting together the first legitimate challenge to their stranglehold on this region is something that has gotten a lot of people excited. Number two, we have innovative organization and management in this campaign. I designed the campaign strategy with former presidential candidate Michael Dukakis, where we have split up the district into small bite-sized zones so that when we're giving folks things, instead of it all being centralized at our wonderful campaign headquarters, it is decentralized into the neighborhoods that our volunteers live in. And then they can then bring in new volunteers in the areas that they live in, and it makes things a lot more efficient. Number three, we are very, very tight with our data, with our targeting, with our analytics. That's my background. I made sure that we are as sharp as possible with that. So the combination of all of these things coming together, and the very smart team we have working with us that has designed tools like callsforalex.com, where we have supporters all across the country, the state, in our district, wherever, making phone calls for us through that website. It's very similar to the platform that Bernie had a little while ago. He's since developed a much nicer one. I wish we had the money to do that. We don't right now, but we do have a lot of people making calls for us on there that might not even live in the district, but want to make a difference in a progressive grassroots race.
Okay, so I really like that. I haven't gotten into any of your platform, what you stand for. I mean, I've read it, but I haven't discussed it with my audience. But you and Sanders are doing something that that is so critical, in my opinion, to the future of elections. One, because and I have to reiterate this, and this is mainly for my audience, not you. I'm sure you know this, but a lot of the reason there's so much money in campaigns is because you have these large staffs that must be paid. And you know, every campaign that has somebody knocking on the door generally is either a paid intern or a paid staffer. And you guys are pulling off something that is phenomenal. It's citizen buy-in and involvement. So with that being said, where can we get access to, if someone in the audience likes what you're doing and they want to participate in this phone banking, where they can phone bank from anywhere in the country? If at the end of this conversation they really like you, where can they do that at?
So they can go directly to callsforalex.com, or they can go to our website, alexlawforcongress.com, and there's a link to that Calls for Alex site there.
Okay, I love that. I love that. And the reason I love that is because what we're building here is the progressive army. And right now in 2016, it has to be a virtual progressive army until in 2020, when we can get boots on the ground. But we can actively help your campaign. If after we grill you, they still like you.
Absolutely. That's what I want to say is wait until you find out what I stand for. I never ask anyone to blindly support me. I got to earn your vote or earn your support. But what I will say, if you do support us, and look, it's great if you want to chip in and help out with $5, $20, whatever you got, we will gladly take it, because it all goes 100% into our grassroots effort, and you will be helping people knock on doors and have the materials that they need so that we can be successful. But we would love to have you donate some time, and it is so crucial, because in that last month, it could very well be the phone calls that are made through Calls for Alex that determine this race, because it is going to be tremendously, tremendously close.
All right, let's get to the issues. Let's see if you stand for what my audience likes and what they need to hear. I see that you stand for campaign finance reform. You are for no voter ID laws whatsoever. Before I move past that too quickly, what does that actually mean?
Well, so here's the thing, right? So voter fraud is a non-existent crime. I think John Oliver put it very succinctly when he said, no one is going to stand in line for 2 hours and risk 5 years in federal penitentiary and $100,000 in fine to vote for somebody else. It is a crime that simply does not happen. And to put in these voter ID laws, it's very plain that the only reason that they're put in place is to keep minority voters, who often vote Democrat and progressive, from influencing election in areas traditionally controlled by Republicans. We've seen that's very plain in places like Alabama, where they have closed the offices in which people would be able to go and get these voter IDs only in the primarily African-American communities, severely disadvantaging these people. And it is absolutely unacceptable. It is distracting from real important issues that we need to solve. While we're trying to fight conservatives over voter ID, which shouldn't even be a conversation at all these horrible things are getting passed behind our backs. So that's how I feel about that issue.
Okay. All right. And So in terms of actually, in terms of legislation, are you going to present legislation that in across the board, there no, because that's really a state by state issue. How would you in Congress actually affect that?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things that could go on with how we deal with voting. I think there's no reason why, like in certain states, we can't have some kind of universal system where folks can either very easily vote from home, which is easier in some places and more difficult in others, or where we can't vote online or digitally. We do our medical care online, we do our finances online. We have the best data scientists in the world, in this country. There's no reason we can't make voting easier for people rather than difficult. And I would look at different ways that we can solve that, but I would also lend my voice to the voice of common sense nationally to say, hey, we can't have these voter ID laws. They're unconstitutional, and we need to push them out.
Okay. All right. All right. So let me move on to some more of your topics, because I know I don't have you for long. LGBTQ rights. You want to defend the freedom of our government from, actually, that's out of place. Tell me more about where you stand, marriage equality, and in particular, what do you hope to accomplish as a congressman from New Jersey on LGBTQ rights?
Yeah, well, so it's a very simple thing. So a lot of people think the battle's over because we have same-sex marriage.
Right.
And that is wonderful accomplishment, but the unfortunate reality is it's not over. There's two major things that we can do at a federal level that will help millions of Americans overnight. The first is there needs to be comprehensive workplace protection for all parts of the LGBTQ community. Very, very important. And it doesn't exist everywhere. In places like the Northeast where I'm from, people take that for granted, but the reality is there are places where it doesn't exist. Number two, we need to have federal hate crime protection, just like there are for other groups of people, for LGBTQ people. The reason for that is in Philadelphia, one of the most gay-friendly places in the entire country, there was a gay bashing incident about a year ago, and these people just got very, very light sentences, even though they explicitly attacked this couple because of their sexual orientation. Now, if you attack someone because they were Jewish or because they were African American, you would face stiffer penalties because of that. And we need to make sure that our friends in the LGBTQ community have that protection.
I think people don't realize that there are many states where there is no protection from discrimination for being LGBTQ. There was a victory for marriage equality, but there are still states where companies can legitimately discriminate against you because of your sexual orientation. And you're saying that you want to tackle that issue head on.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting one because almost everywhere else in my policy and the way that I view things, I'm looking to get people out of prisons. And this is one area where I think we actually need stiffer law and order. Now, in terms of what I think with criminal justice reform, I often say that, in America, we have a creed, the land of the free, but the American deed does not match the American creed because we imprison more people than any country in the history of the world. And primarily, the people that are imprisoned are young African-American males. Why? Because we have ridiculous drug policy where we're throwing people in prison for having marijuana or small quantities of other drugs. So number one, we need to change our culture in the United States where we're trying to punish drugs, where we're trying to treat people with drugs and get them healthy. Number two, we need to legalize marijuana on a federal level. I think that's very important. We've seen in the states that have been the laboratories for democracy, in Colorado and Washington State, that it's been an overwhelming success. Most new millionaires anywhere in the country, crime rates have gone down, funding for education has gone up. It works. And we need to make sure that we implement, because we have ridiculous, horrible things happening, private prisons sprouting up all over the place. The judicial system incentivized to send more and more young, potentially productive members of society to prison to be pretty much permanently part of being institutionalized. And that is a horrible thing. And we need to make sure that that stops now.
All right, let's drill down there. So you sound very passionate about that. You sound very, you sound ready, right? All jokes aside, you sound ready. You sound like you're ready for a debate. You sound like you're ready for the issues. But I'm curious on the criminal justice reform, how you sound convincing. But tell me, 5 years ago, before you even thought about running for office, did something like criminal justice ever cross your mind?
Well, it did. I mean, this is 5 years ago, by the way. I would have been 19 years old. Because when I win this election, I'm going to be the youngest congressman elected since 1974. I'm 24 years old right now. I'll be 25 by the time I'm elected. But these are things that I was thinking about. I was a student at a finance university. I actually wrote one of my thesis papers on the economics of private prisons and why they're a horrible thing for this country. This is something that I thought a tremendous amount about. And it was something that was eye-opening when you saw places like California literally shipping the poorest prisoners from California to private prisons in Tennessee. Not only was that bad in terms of human rights, it was bad because these people did not have the resources to get their lawyers out there, to get their family out there to see them. And they were stuck in a foreign place, in a place where it felt like no one was listening or caring about them. And it's wrong.
Alex, I'm not easily impressed. I'm almost impressed. You really should. I know it's the last second. We put this interview together at the last second, so this is no fault of your own. But I really need to get you back on the air so we can do a video so people can actually see the passion in your eyes. I can hear it in your voice, but we want to get you back on to do video so they can see the passion in your eyes. You almost have me convinced. You wrote a thesis about this in college about private prisons, and so this has been something even before you started running for office. This is something that was near and dear enough to you to actually make a thesis out of it. And I think that I'd like to read that. I think that speaks volumes. Let me ask you about two critical things that when I first saw your site, I didn't see mentioned. The first one is I see that you support Israel, which no problem supporting Israel. When I first came to your site, I didn't see anything about Palestine. So where do you fall in terms of Israel and Palestine?
Well, so I am a Jewish American. I've traveled to Israel, and it's something that I think is a very interesting, delicate issue. Now, I do not support the Netanyahu administration. I think he has been one of the worst things, both internally for Israel and internationally for Israel's reputation, that has happened to the country in a very long time. I think that we absolutely need to be looking at how we can create a two-state solution that works, because I believe Palestinians have a right to have their own country there. And I think there's some really troubling things that go on both sides that make it very, very difficult for us to understand here in America where these things aren't happening. You know, without getting too deep into that specific issue, it's a very, very difficult situation. I support Israel as our ally. I support them as the shining example of democracy in the Middle East. But I do think that we need to make sure that Palestinians have some sovereignty in that region, that they have their own country, that they have international recognition, and that we can be a part of finding that solution the best that we can.
In your opinion, what is the greatest hindrance to that solution finding? I mean, obviously, besides hundreds of years of conflict in the region, but politically right now today, what can you do in Congress, and what would you like to see done with our ally Israel to actually bring that two-state solution to pass?
Yeah, well, so when I was in Israel, we were talking with a very liberal professor there, someone who, despite being Israeli, despite being Jewish, was very much in the middle on this issue. And there's a couple of things that I think aren't talked about a lot here in the States that are very divisive politically, locally to it there. And you have issues when they're trying to draw the border of where this new state should be carved out of. You have Palestinian states that have used, or Palestinian cities that have used to being under Israeli Western law that do not want to switch to a Sharia law country. You have an issue where Palestinians, unlike any other group, I think anywhere in the world, maintain their migrant status for generations, even though they've settled in Jordan. And that's because Jordan doesn't want to give them citizenship there. So they're sort of growing in population, whereas other people that might have been dislocated justly or unjustly, then when they settle next generation or two, they become Jordanians or wherever it is they settle. So these are political issues that are very difficult to deal with, because you have a huge population of Palestinians that exist 3-4 generations, and you have issues with where you're going to draw. How do you draw this boundary? Because there's some towns that want to be in Palestine, some towns that want to stay in Israel, but Israel says if there's going to be two states, that all of the Palestinian towns have to go into Palestine. That becomes a local political issue. It's very difficult. So again, I kind of a little deep in it, but
Yeah.
as the United States, I think that, we can be there and help these negotiations and use our presence in the region, our economic ability to sort of help solve this the best we can.
And absolutely. And I know I don't have you for 3 days. We can unpack that for 3 days straight, to be fair to the subject. So feel free, if you want to share some links or anything to supplement the conversation, I'll be more than happy to spread them. Let me jump to my last topic that we haven't gotten a chance to talk about. I do have a caller on hold. I didn't, we'll chat about that. I'll send you a message. Here's my.
By the way, I can stay a little longer. If you need an extra 5 minutes or something, we're having a great conversation. I'd be happy to stay a little longer.
Good. Because the next question is something else I didn't see on your website. And the reason I think it's important to bring it up, that you get it on your website as soon as possible. Black Lives Matter in particular. I know we talked about criminal justice reform, but in this, I'm talking about, I want to talk about something specific. Today, I was a part of a forum on the Sanders subreddit about how Bernie Sanders can reach the African-American vote. And there is this tension between quote unquote Bernie bros, which are usually labeled as white guys about your age group, even though I've been called a Bernie bro. But I digress. The point is, there's this tension, or this perceived tension, between the Bernie Sanders subreddit, Reddit in general, Bernie bro population, and the African-American vote. In terms of race, in terms of racial justice, in terms of police brutality, all categorized as Black Lives Matter, where do you stand, and what are your thoughts? And then I'll unpack it from there.
Yeah, well, so this is something that is near and dear not only to me, but to my region. My district has Camden, New Jersey, the poorest town in the entire United States, the town with the most violence anywhere in the United States. Camden is a place that has had tremendous challenges, and it is a place that is primarily Latino and African American, with most being African American in Camden. It's the biggest city in my district, so this is a very important issue. I 100% support the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it is absolutely critical for our national conversation, for our national culture, that we embrace this, that we make sure that there is accountability with police. Most police are good people, but like in any profession, there are issues, and we have the technology, whether it's with body cams or other things, to make sure that there's accountability with law enforcement. And most law enforcement is open and welcomes these new changes. Now, let me tell you just briefly, because this is very important, I think, for people who are getting to know me and learning why I'm running and why I said the Norcrosses are, quote, corrupt or graft or whatever. They have been systematically taking advantage of Camden, New Jersey for decades. This is an area that has had overwhelming Democratic control for 30 years. And Camden has only gotten worse and worse and worse, while only 5 miles away you have places like Haddonfield, New Jersey, which is one of the wealthiest places in the entire United States. To me, you got to ask, how does that happen? And the answer is that my opponent, Congressman Norcross, when he was in the state assembly, he would write bills that would then financially benefit his family, and would be able to get them passed because they supposedly addressed Camden issues. And very, very quickly, an example of that, and we outline this on the website, alexlawforcongress.com, is this bill that said, okay, let's stimulate economic growth in Camden. So it said, let's send $1.1 billion there to create jobs. Sounds like a great idea. The problem is almost all of it, like 900 million of it, went to companies that either his family owned, controlled, or were donors to his campaign. And they are creating jobs at $300,000 per job. I could give any one of your listeners, or you or me, $300,000 in cash today. You could have no business plan and you could create more than one job. I guarantee you that. And what's happening on top of that is because these companies are coming in and grabbing land in Camden so aggressively, land prices, according to banks, are going up, which means residents who actually pay taxes, these corporations get 20 years of tax abatements, their taxes are going up. So they're being pushed out of their homes, people who already have financial hardship and difficulty, so that corporations can buy more of their land. And this is the kind of policies that we're dealing with here in South Jersey.
I hear you and I follow you. I follow the connection between the lack of economic investment, money that comes to your district that should rightfully go to some of the areas, including Camden, and they have been excluded because of potential political corruption, whatever the proper phrase is, whether it was actual corruption or whether it was done properly and just still not in the best interest of its constituents. I hear you. My question, though, is in terms of the disconnect between, because I would let me start here. You sound passionate about it. I hear you, but it's not on your website. It's not on your website in terms of Black Lives Matter, criminal justice. To be fair to you, criminal justice is on your website, but with this passion, why is it not represented in your platform? One, but then two, I think more importantly is, what do you do to address that disconnect? Because if Camden is a part, I know Camden pretty decently. If Camden is a part of your district, how would you connect with that constituency? Likewise, if you can connect with that group, how would Bernie Sanders connect with that group? Because right now there is this pervasive narrative that Bernie Sanders and the Bernie bros just cannot connect with Black people. Did I lose you? Are you there, Alex? Hang on, folks. He is still here. He's reconnecting. That was horrible timing.
I'm sorry. I'm here. I don't know what happened. It just dropped out.
That was Alex, I have to swear, that was the absolute worst timing possible, because I actually hit you with a good question and I lost you.
I got the first half of it. You said, okay. You said it's not on your website and it should be. In the second part, the more important part is, and then it cut out.
Okay. The more important part is, there is this pervasive narrative that Bernie Sanders and the Bernie bros can't connect with the Black vote. And I know Camden well enough to know that if they're part of your district, if you can connect with Camden, then you can help Sanders connect with the Black vote. But my question is, number one, if you're so passionate about it, why is it not on your website? And number two, how do you fix that perception that a Bernie bro, a 24-year-old white guy like yourself, just can't connect with Black people?
So the first part is, we created pretty much all of the policy, everything on the website about 18 months ago. This is before Black Lives Matter started trending, before Bernie Sanders was running for president. Something we're proud of, in that a lot of the exciting progressive policy that we put on there is now sort of part of the public narrative. So I can tell you this, it will be on there tomorrow. And something my apologies, there's oversight, but it is something I passionately support. It will be on there. Number two, how do we connect with Black voters? You just have to be honest. You have to be earnest in the things that you're talking about. You have to be there. You can't come the week before the election and say, hey, vote for me, my ideas line up with you. That does not work, because this is a region where people have been promised and told things time and time again, similar to other Black communities all across the country, but they've been taken advantage of by these millionaires and billionaires, people who have this political power and are not looking out for them. They just want their vote. So you have to be there. That's why I've been out on the street picketing, marching with a megaphone with my friends in the Save the Public Schools movement here in Camden. That's something we can get into another time, but there's a whole issue where the public schools are being destroyed in the city, which is a terrible, terrible thing for the future well-being of the city. So that's number one, being there. Number two, you have to make sure that when you are talking to folks in the suburbs, when you're talking to folks in other towns, that you do not forget about Camden, that you do not only talk about Camden issues when you're talking to Camden. It has to be a part of your message. It can't be a message that is only delivered to the Black community, because all people can smell when you're full of it. And if you make it part of who you are, and you make it part of when you talk to Haddonfield, when you talk to Camden, when you talk to Voorhees, when you talk to any town, it goes a long way. So I think you have to be there, and you have to make it part of your message.
Let me jump in there, and Alex, and I do want you to come back on my show, but I have to push back on one thing. Now, first, let me start with the good. in any profession, you always give something good before you give something bad. The good thing is you're going to put it on your site tomorrow. I applaud you for that. I think it speaks volumes that you're willing to make that change and make that correction, mainly because it's very important that it's not neglected, because it can easily backfire on you, right? So I appreciate that. But Black Lives Matter started in 2013. The hashtag actually started in 2013, and it has been around for some time. So, you know, the fact that your site has been up since now, if your site has been up for 18 months, I give you that. That is a long time, and it may not have been an issue prevalent in front of you right then. So I'm going to thank you in advance. Everybody on my site, everyone who's listening now, I want you guys to go to his site tomorrow, and I want you to see if he's made those changes. Let's give him to the end of business tomorrow to make those changes. And if he makes those changes and you like everything else that he said, because I do, Alex, I like you. And I like what you stand for. I like your energy. I want you guys to not only go to his site and see if he adds Black Lives Matter, but I want you to go to his site and make some phone calls for him, because anyone who's willing to adapt and change and someone who stands for progressive values and has some technology that we can actually spread to help progressivism is really something that that is a benefit. Now, I soften that up as much as I can, as much as I could. But just to be straight, it did start in 2013 after George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin. I have now. Hang on, before I move too fast, I don't know if you want to say anything after that.
No, I mean, I think that's great, and we're gonna make sure that it's up there, and we'll move forward. It's gonna be good.
Hey, that's all we can do is move forward. I have a caller who's been on hold. I didn't clear whether or not you wanted to take calls beforehand, but he's here and we've already asked. So 517, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hello?
Yep, this is you. You're live on the air with Alex Law and Benjamin Dixon. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hello, my name is William, and sorry, just no feedback that caused me a fire. Anyways, the comment that I have is that actually the reason why Bernie Sanders is connecting well with the Black community is because large majority of the establishment within the Black community is already sided with Clinton because they know her well. She's well connected. So when you have someone who is supposed to be a leader,
well, let me do this. Let me jump in here for 1 second and let me ask you: do you have a question specific for Alex? Because if not, we're going to go into great detail. I can keep you on hold. Do you have a question specifically for Alex Law?
Alex, have you looked into any of Hillary Clinton's policies, and what is your judgment based on those policies?
Okay, so the question is, have you listened to any of Hillary Clinton's policies, and which of those policies, it sounds like, do you have any type of, I don't know, quite, let me put you back on hold, caller. I don't think he was actually ready for you, Alex. So in fairness, I'm not gonna make you answer. But if you heard it, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, I'm someone who lives and breathes politics and follows all of what's going on nationally. And Hillary Clinton is someone who's been a disappointment for me personally. Someone who I think the issue for me that sums up her candidacy is the issue with the bank transcripts, and that, you know, there's all these questions with how she's raising money and who's supporting her and whose interest she really has at heart, whether it's us or banks. And then she's taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from banks and won't tell us what she said to them. And her only answer is, well, that's what they wanted to pay me, and I'm not releasing anything. And to me, that's just, it's shameful.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this last question, Alex, because you've been with me for about 25 minutes now, and you only, you know, we only asked for 15 minutes of your time. So I want to respect your time. Tell us why you are, you know, give us your elevator speech on why you are progressive and why you support Bernie Sanders.
Well, sure. And I get this question all the time. So, and I'm a big quotes person, and the people that in my office, they hear me talking about quotes all the time. And the one that I use when I'm talking about why I'm a progressive comes from one of my personal heroes, Bobby Kennedy from 1968, when he said, what we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence or lawlessness, but love and wisdom and compassion. towards one another and a feeling of justice towards those who suffer within our country. And to me, that really sums up what it means to be a progressive, that when you're thinking about policy, when you're thinking about what government should do, the first thing that you think about is how we can help people, that people matter in politics. And that has been the backbone of our campaign, along with something, and a much shorter quote that Teddy Roosevelt said when he said, when we rule ourselves, we have the responsibility of sovereigns, not of subjects. Mm-hmm. So those two quotes have been defining pillars that have held up this campaign and what we believe in and why we believe so passionately in values.
Excellent. I have a question here from our chat room that I'm going to lay this on you because it's coming from our chat room, and my chat room is always on 100 on beast mode. But I'm gonna preface this by saying I personally don't think this question is fair to lay it at his feet, but I'm going to ask it. The reason I don't think it's fair to lay it at his feet is because it's a question we have to lay at the feet of everyone. The question is, with regard to Black Lives Matter, this is from Will. Will wants to know, why is it only an issue for you once it became trending? Why did you not feel that your brothers and sisters in the human race, why did you not feel for your brothers and sisters in this human race until it was a politicized issue?
I think that's a great question, and it sort of speaks to, I think, what I miscommunicated. It's not that you could see all of the policies we have on our site addresses the things that Black Lives Matter stands for better, more responsible policing, for comprehensive drug reform, for getting rid of private prisons, for making sure that there isn't laws that prevent certain groups in this country from voting. These things that Black Lives Matter are looking to accomplish, we have supported. We just didn't have the phrase on there because it was an oversight. But I passionately support these issues, and from day one on our website, all of them have been on there.
I agree with that. I do agree with you that there are issues, whether or not you go underneath the banner or not. But let me tell you where I disagree, even with the premise of the question. I disagree with the premise of the question because so many people, not just white people, even African Americans, did not have the issue of Black Lives Matter in the forefront, regardless of the mantra or the slogan. It really required a political movement like Black Lives Matter to usher it into the forefront. Now, I agree with you that all of the underlying issues should be addressed on a regular basis. And you're saying that the core of your platform, and everyone can evaluate that for themselves, the core of your platform actually sustains or addresses issues, rather, that are pertinent to improving the lives of African Americans and Black Americans across the country. But it still speaks volumes to the fact that an issue, and I'm addressing the question more so than you, the issue is something that out of sight, out of mind, right? We really did not have a laser-like focus. No one, not President Obama, not yours truly, no one. And that's one of the reasons that I applaud Black Lives Matter so much, is because they're bringing a reality to the forefront of everyone's conversation that we have all been negligent on. Because honestly, let's ask ourselves personally, did we think about the prevalent, did we even know about the prevalent issues, the daily killings, before social media exposed it to us? I think most people thought everything was hunky-dory and peachy keen, right? Until we start seeing on social media how bad things really were. So that's really, I'm really speaking to my audience more than you, because for me, the premise of the question, it's a great question to ask you. Thank you for the answer. But I think it really speaks to a bigger issue, that out of sight, out of mind. And we're really that type of country that if we don't have something pushed in our forefront on a regular basis, then it really will escape us, because all of us are going about our 9-to-5-day job. Listen, I didn't mean to go off on my tangent, because I'm going to do that for the next 45 minutes. Alex, let's talk more about you. One thing I do want to say is you absolutely take these questions like a champ. I really appreciate that. I want everyone to go to your site tonight, and I want you to see his site tonight. But more importantly, I want you to go tomorrow so we can see what he says about Black Lives Matter. With everything else that he said, I think everyone listening, I think at least 10% of you should go out there and make some calls for him. That's just my personal opinion. I'm a good judge of character, Alex, and I like what you stand for. Tell everyone how they can support you, where they can reach you, and what's next.
Yeah, well, first I want to say I'm looking forward to when I come back on the show and we can have a deep dive into some specific issues, and that's going to be a lot of fun for your audience. But if you do want to support the campaign, let me just tell you this. We are a district with 174,000 Democrats and only 60,000 Republicans, which means the winner of the Democratic primary wins the general election.
Yeah.
And we have a Democrat in there that has voted with Republicans more than any Democrat in the state of New Jersey. We need to change that, and we need to change it now. This is an election where the winner will get 20,000 votes or less out of 174,000 Democrats. So every phone call you make, every $5 you contribute to our campaign will mean that we reach someone that votes, that will vote in this election, and it will make a huge impact to the bottom line of deciding who wins this election, who represents South Jersey. So when I ask you to come make calls for me, when I ask you to donate, I ask you that with a plan in place for how we are going to win, and we expect to win this election on June 7th, 2016. So you can do that by going to alexlawforcongress.com, or you can go to callsforalex.com. Both of them, the Calls for Alex, you can go make calls. The Alex Law for Congress will have all the information, the policy, the videos, the news articles, the contribution link, and a link to the Calls for Alex. I hope you will come on board. And if you send a message to the website, I respond to every single person. It's been thousands. Every single person that writes to our website, I respond to personally. So if you want to ask me a question later, you can do it there.
Alex, thank you so much for your time. Let's schedule another time. There's a long time between now and June. Not long enough, but there's enough time for us to have another call. And we should do not a call, but a video. And we'll do a video on a specific issue, whether it be Israel and Palestine, a two-state solution, or anything else. Let's talk about it via email. So thanks so much for.
Thank you for having me, and looking forward to the next one.
My pleasure. My pleasure. All right, everyone. That has been Alex Law for Congress. Go to alexlawforcongress.com. I really enjoyed that interview. One, he's thorough. And he takes these questions